Hello everyone, today we're going to be looking at the heart as well as what happens in heart failure. So we know that the heart usually pumps about 5 liters of blood every minute, and this is called the cardiac output. However, in heart failure this is reduced to 4 or maybe even 3 liters of blood every minute. So if the heart's not working, we know that our cells and tissues really need that oxygen and glucose in order to be alive. And so if they don't get that, we end up feeling really fatigued and tired. Additionally, we have particular organs like our kidneys which really need that blood. And if the kidneys don't get it, that actually results in a rebound increase in blood pressure, which makes heart failure a lot worse. Also, if the heart's not working, it means that we actually have a buildup of blood behind the heart. So if we look at the left side of the heart, we know that blood is actually coming from the lungs. So this means that we have a buildup of blood in the lungs. And this means that in terms of the symptoms, you actually end up coughing up blood and you actually end up having this pink phlegm. You also have a lot of difficulty breathing because you actually have fluid instead of air in your alveoli. Now on the other hand, in right-sided heart failure, blood's actually coming from the rest of the body. But you mainly have a buildup of blood in the legs because gravity is pushing all the fluid all the way down. You also have a buildup of blood in the jugular vein, and this vein collects blood from the head and neck area. And this happens because this vein doesn't have valves, so blood kind of easily clogs back from the heart. Now let's have a look at why you have reduced cardiac output. Now heart failure can be divided into two distinct categories. It could be that there's not enough blood going into the heart in the first place, and this is called preload. And this is referred to as diastolic heart failure because it's a problem in the filling of blood. Think of it like this: the more that there is in the heart, the more the heart muscles are stretched and the more force they snap back with, a bit like a rubber band. Now you could think of it another way as well. Another type of heart failure is when there's not enough blood being pumped out. This is a problem in the heart muscle itself because it's a contractile problem. And this is called systolic heart failure. Now it doesn't matter if you have diastolic heart failure or systolic heart failure because at the end of the day it just means you have a reduced stroke volume, which means the amount of blood which leaves the heart with each heartbeat. Now an example of diastolic heart failure is when your heart muscle gets very big and strong, called hypertrophy. While this does mean you have more force with each heartbeat, it means you actually have less blood inside your heart because the heart muscle takes up so much space. On the contrary, systolic heart failure means your heart muscles are very thin and flimsy. This is called dilated cardiomyopathy. And this means you have less force, but more blood inside, so you can see that you actually need the right balance between force and volume of blood. Now the Frank-Starling mechanism shows the relation between preload, the amount of blood going in, and stroke volume, the amount of blood going out. And you can see that as the preload increases, so does the stroke volume for a normal person. In heart failure, it's very much similar, but you can see that the graph is shifted further down. So for example, at any given preload, let's say 120 ml because that's the average amount of blood in the heart, the stroke volume is reduced by about 30 milliliters. Not only that, but if you remember I said in systolic heart failure, your preloads can be slightly higher because you have less muscle mass. However, in diastolic heart failure, your preloads can be slightly lower because you have more muscle mass. So, just to reiterate, in heart failure you have a reduced cardiac output. So it could go down from 5, maybe down to 4, or even lower possibly. But the main thing I want you to take home is that cardiac output is affected by stroke volume and heart rate. And in heart failure, the stroke volume is reduced, so the cardiac output is reduced. Now, the heart rate is actually elevated in heart failure, and that's done to kind of compensate and kind of increase the cardiac output in an effort to do that anyway. The heart also tries to increase stroke volume, and this can be done by increasing the amount of blood going in, using hormones like ADH and aldosterone. It also tries to increase the amount of blood leaving the heart, and this can be done by physically bulking up. And if you remember, that's called myocardial hypertrophy. Now, while this is really good in the short term because it means that there's more blood leaving the heart, eventually your heart muscles get really overworked and really tired, and they eventually start to die off because there's not enough blood supplying them, to be honest. And also, if you remember, I said myocardial hypertrophy was one of the main causes of diastolic heart failure. So compensation isn't great, but I hope that overall this very quick overview has helped.